Let me here start by asking you about the just cause of the U.S. to strike the Iranian nuclear facilities and how legal were these strikes were.
Thanks to you and your views, and thanks for having me. The main cause of these strikes is that has a red line for Iran. And such a red line for all the world's countries in the idea of the possession of nuclear weapons. According to the U.S. calculus itself, the U.S. did not recognize reporters of the IAEA or any other entities that could provide a report with this regard. Therefore, the U.S., since the start or the beginning of the Israeli-Iranian strike, or even since the October 7th, 2023, between Gaza and Israel, there was an American desire to strike Iran and targeting the Iranian nuclear facilities to disrupt its thickness of Iranian nuclear programs. Certainly, there are international rules under the international law that banned such ongoing strikes, but the war itself, since 3 years in the Middle East, by all its details, against the international law, and even the current engagement between Iran and Israel under against the international law. So it is basically for the idea of and the Israeli strikes against the international law. And there is no legislation to give the right for U.S. to target Iran on air by missiles against the nuclear facilities. Based on the IAEA, such facilities, some of them are used for peaceful energy purposes. Therefore, legally, the U.S. is actually condemned, but who would be able to condemn the U.S.? This is the question.
This is a big question indeed. Now, what could be the repercussions of the U.S. attack on Iran for the broader Middle East, from your point of view?
Certainly, we are here talking about the Iranian retaliation scenarios. Based on my estimation, Iran isn't going to target the U.S. American bases in the Arab Gulf, which means it's a declaration of war with the U.S. And U.S. says that it is fully prepared to the first point of military operations, and even when Iran is targeting the U.S. American bases throughout the 5 Arab countries, which means an aggression against all of the Arab countries, as targeting the U.S. on the U.S. bases on the Arab soil, which means that the aggression of half of the Arab world, and many of the countries are very active players. Particularly, these countries have already improved their relations and ties with Iran voluntarily since 2021, and therefore Iran will lose too much if it targets the spaces in the Arab countries that would lose the Arabic ties, that they are the support Iran, and Iran is very much indeed for the Arab diplomacy, as Sultanate of Oman is a mediator, but Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE are present in such mediations, particularly in the last hours of the U.S. strikes against Iran. So therefore, Iran do not wish to lose the Arab ties that has been improved. Under my estimation, Iran, if it targeted to close the Hormuz Strait, would lose its ties with China, India, and South Korea. That these countries are very much beneficiaries of the Hormuz Strait. closure of such a stream won't damage the U.S. in any form, but would damage the Asian country that receive the fuel from the such an area. I mean, China and India and the South Korea. So the rationalization for the Iran should have to
Mr. Omar,
punish you.
Mr. Omar, let me here get to the point. And what do you think about the reaction from the international community towards what happened, particularly the United Nations? And what does this indicate about the current geopolitical landscape?
In fact, Iran won't pursue to some sort of escalation in retaliation to be very limited towards Israel. As if Iran was to expand, this escalation will be change the regional and the political landscape and the Asia. The issue if the escalation would lead to changes. So Iran is very eager to not to expand the conflict and to be limited between Iran and Israel, because if it is expanded out of such a circle to targeting military bases outside of Israel or the Strait of Hormuz, that will lead the regional conflict or international, and the ultimate price will be paid by Iran, as Iran is receiving direct strikes following receiving the such strikes by its proxies. So Iran is alone in such a conflict. So therefore, Iran will pursue not to expand such a conflict, because it is not going to be in its interest particularly.
I was speaking about the reaction of the international community as well, but let me here get to another important question, which is how will that development, or how will the developments so far reflect on the non-proliferation treaty and the race, the nuclear race in the region?
Absolutely. Israel was pursued to eliminate the Iranian nuclear program in order to be the sole nuclear power in the Middle East as announced. And the unannounced, there are many details. And of course, Pakistan is a nuclear state, but do not pose any threat against Israel. And certainly, Iran has a very historical opportunity not to take advantage of such an institute to go out of the NPT and to make such an escalation because of what affected its facilities, and should deal with the United Nations along with the IAEA instead of vows to revenge. It should cooperate with such an institution in order to take some sort of illegal form of condemnation against the U.S. strikes. Such condemnation resolution we should build upon in order to have some sort of collective security in the Middle East.